And
Welcome to another exciting episode of the BYU Management Society's Learn from Professional series. Whether you're exploring different career paths or ready to dive into your next big opportunity, we're here to provide the guidance and insights that will help you thrive. Today, we have the privilege of hearing from a true expert in the education industry. Thank you so much, Dr. David Boren, for joining us today and sharing your valuable time and expertise. We're eager to learn from your experiences and wisdom. So, as introduction, David grew up in Mesa, Arizona, and Sandpoint, Idaho, and served a mission of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Concepcion, Chile. He studied elementary education at BYU and spent the first several years of his career as an elementary teacher and administrator in Alpine School District in Utah. He earned a master's in education and a Ph.D. in educational leadership from BYU. For the last several years, he has worked as the director of the BYU School Leadership Graduate Program, preparing future school and district leaders. He loves working with aspiring teachers and leaders. David and his wife, Sherrie, have five amazing children and live in Pleasant Grove, Utah. In his free time, David enjoys running, mountain biking, hiking, fishing, basketball, singing, storytelling, traveling, and hanging out with his family. Welcome, David. Really appreciate you being able to be here on this meeting. So let's dive right in. You've made quite the impact in your field. I'm a part of that impact. I've been able to attend many of your classes. I feel well rewarded from attending those and appreciate the work that you're doing to help aspiring leaders in education. Um, what's the first thing that sparked your interest in pursuing a career in the education field?
well, first off, John, just thanks for having me. This is so fun.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, you were one of those star students, and just happy to be with you today. Wow, what got me into education? I'll tell a short story to kind of kick this off. I was um, just off my mission for maybe a year or two. I had switched majors a few times. In fact, I was pre-med, and then I was going to do business management, then social work, and marriage, family, human development. I just didn't know what to do with my life. I was teaching at the MTC at the time after my mission, and I loved teaching at the MTC. And I called my mom one Sunday and just said, "Mom, I have no idea what to do with my life. I'm just wasting my time here at school, paying all this tuition, and I'm not making any progress." And she said, "Well, have you thought about teaching? You love to teach." And I immediately pushed that idea away. I said, "No, I don't want to teach. They're kind of curmudgeon-y and low status. And, I want to do something important." And she wasn't buying that because she'd been a teacher, and both her parents had been teachers, and her grandparents had been teachers. And so I thought, okay, I'm gonna get her with this comment. I said, "Mom, I want to make enough money so that when I retire, my wife and I can serve missions together." And my mom quipped right back. She says, "David, why don't you make your life a mission?" Whoa. Oh, okay. She said, No matter what you do, whether you go into business or medicine or law or education, don't live your life waiting to make a difference. You make your life a mission in whatever you choose to do." And wow, when she said that, it hit me like a bolt of lightning. It was powerful. And for me, I got the confirmation with her first question that I should explore teaching and education as an option. And so then I started doing research and figuring out how to do that because I had never considered it. But I guess I would encourage anyone listening to this. I would give you the same invitation my mom gave. Why don't you make your life a mission in whatever field you choose?
Which is great advice. A lot of times, and I kind of had some similar soul searching. It's interesting because I also had a lot of family involved in the teaching world, education world. I think that may help. Some people get into teaching and realize that it is a calling. You do change a lot of people's lives. You're influenced by other people's lives as well as influence their lives for good. And I really, wonder what it would be like for someone who doesn't have family and education already, because it is quite a drastic, almost splash of cold water of like, hey, this is teaching, this is where we're at. There's a lot of advice that's given along the way, and it's helpful to be able to hear from experts like you to know what people may be getting into. And it's great to hear also what's made the difference in your life. It would be great if we could look back at our lives before we actually started in a career and say, hey, this is what's going to be making a difference. You've had some time in this career field, a number of years. One of the reasons why I wanted to reach out to you. But looking back, what do you think were the key steps that led you to the position that you hold now? Was it all planned, or were there unexpected twists along the way?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, yeah, I mean, the Lord has definitely played a huge role in all of this. His guiding hand has led me. So, uh, yeah, I went into education and I didn't know where it would lead, and taught. I taught for I think 5 years, and then there was a point where I was teaching and I was trying to decide if I wanted to go to graduate school or if I wanted to go teach internationally. And I didn't know which to do. I wanted to do both. So I applied to several graduate schools and I applied for international jobs. And I went to an international teaching conference where a bunch of international schools come together and interview candidates. And uh, this was early in my career, and I got some offers to teach in different countries. And I called my wife. This was back, we didn't have cell phones
Yeah.
at this point. So I was just calling her like once a day. I was back in Iowa at a teaching conference,
Mhm.
all places. And I called her up, said, "Okay, honey, we've got some offers in Korea and China and Mexico, and I think there were some others, and here are the ones I'm thinking are pretty good." And bless her heart, she was so supportive of me.
Yeah.
She said, "Well, yeah, we can look at those. You also just got an acceptance letter in the mail from a graduate school."
Mhm.
And as soon as she said that, I knew I was supposed to do graduate school. And at the time, I thought, doggone it, why didn't the Lord tell me before I came out to Iowa and spent money on plane tickets and all of this stuff?
Yeah.
But he needed me to go through that process. And anyway, I went to graduate school, continued teaching, and one thing led to another, and I doors opened that I never suspected would open. That um, I I think it would have been good to go teach internationally, but
Mhm.
that's not what the Lord needed me to do. He needed me to stay here and do graduate school, and
Mhm.
I don't think I would be in my position now doing what I'm doing if I had taken that other path. And it could have been a good path, but
Mhm.
yeah, I think leaning on the Lord was definitely the biggest decision I made, and he's just guided each step of the way.
Yeah. I find it interesting, that process that we have to go through. It's never something that we plan ahead and everything just goes the way we plan it. I'd say, especially in the education world, um, as much as it would be nice, there's always that process that we have to go through. Um, for someone brand new thinking about the education field, what kind of things would you give as advice, or what kind of educational background is essential? What do they need to prepare for? Qualifications, skills that you'd recommend for them to focus on?
Yeah, it's interesting. A few years ago, I was talking to a school principal that was really struggling, was really having a hard time. And it's hard work, as you know, it's a hard job.
Yeah.
But it became very clear very fast why this principal was struggling. He said, "You know, David, I just don't like people." Oh, well, yeah, that's a problem in
Yep.
this field. Uh, your entire day as a teacher, as an administrator, is working with people, building people, helping them through their messy struggles and problems, their triumphs, their struggles, their challenges. And if that messiness and those personalities, if that's not something you like, then I would say education is not for you. There's probably a better fit. But if you love people, you love the complexity of people, and you love relationships, then I would say this is probably a good fit for you. And if you're going into education, just working on uh, how to work with people, how to listen, how to communicate, uh, how to build people up, how to build their capacity. It's that's probably the number one skill
Hmm.
I would say. I mean, obviously a lot of others like time management and prioritizing and collaboration and critical thinking, creativity, and a
Yeah.
lot of those character traits are really important as well.
It is interesting that you state that with the people, because with education, I feel the same way. It's so much interactive, and you work with people all the time. At the same time, even though that might be the challenge or the difficulty in the education field, is you're always working with people. What would you say is the most rewarding aspect of your profession?
Hmm. So yeah, the relationships and the people are definitely a big part of that. And since we're at BYU, I'll say probably the most rewarding part of my job is when God helps me to see and feel what he sees and feels towards his children.
Yeah.
So when that veil can just be pulled back for a minute and I can feel God's love for somebody, no matter how difficult they're being or what they're doing, if I can see and feel what God sees and feels for them, man, that is so rewarding. And then I can be a conduit of his love and help them to feel his love. That's probably the most rewarding thing. And I'm reminded of a story that Elder Eyring tells. He was a bishop, and one of his members of his ward, who was a newer member of his ward, uh, was driving drunk and drove into a building
Mhm.
and was incarcerated. And he was going to go meet with this member of his ward. And as he was driving to go meet with this member, he was planning all the ways he was just going to let this guy have it.
Yeah.
He was just going to say, "You embarrassed yourself, embarrassed the church, and you know better." And he said that God paused him and said, let me show you how I see him, and let me show you what I feel for him." And Elder Eyring said, "That absolutely changed the way I worked with that man.
Yeah.
And it changed me as his leader." So for me, that's probably the most rewarding is when I can get a glimpse of God's love for his children and be a conduit of that love.
Sometimes it's easier to see the challenges that whether it's an adult student, a young child, you never know what's happened on the weekend, where they're coming from, if their parents just had some big trial in their life the night before, and they're just it should be amazing that they're just there at school. And I think you're right, being able to um, show that caring, loving kindness to those students. And it's really, like you mentioned before, it's about the people. The better you understand them. And I feel in my own experience looking through the years, it's really being able to connect to people, individuals, and And as you do, you better understand them. So, um,
And that's really hard sometimes when they're being really obnoxious or difficult or messy. It's
yep.
hard to do that.
Yeah, there's definitely some very hard circumstances that people go through with that. Yeah, I get it. The world is, evolving. There's a lot more difficulties, I mean, challenges that we're facing in the education world. Um, how do you feel like young professionals, people just entering into the education field, how do you think that they could stay ahead of that curve? What do you think that would be beneficial for young professionals to understand?
Yeah. So I think this actually um, harkens back to even what the purposes of schooling are. When we think about what we're trying to do with young students in K-12 education, it's got to be more than content knowledge acquisition. Absolutely important, but they need things that will endure and transfer across contexts and time. So those are things like skills and dispositions and attributes and character.
Hmm.
Uh, and if we can build that foundation in our students, they'll be prepared for anything. And it's the same in us. So as we're preparing school leaders, we could go into the very specific mechanics of budgets and school safety and some of those things that are important, and our students do need that. But if that's all we do with our new professionals and don't really develop their dispositions and their skills that are transferable across contexts, we do them a great disservice. So I would say, as a young professional, make sure that you are building your foundational skills and dispositions that will transfer across contexts and across, um, you know, locales and across time.
Yeah.
Uh, so, and a lot of those are foundational in the gospel of Jesus Christ as well. But being really intentional about that will definitely help.
Yeah, no, for sure. And to kind of follow up with that, as you've kind of seen maybe successful leaders in the field of education, what kinds of dispositions or qualities have you seen them have in common, those that are successful in the education field?
Yeah. Yeah, so we've done some research on this, and a lot of people have.
Hmm.
Uh, but in schools, like the schools I just described that are really focused on kind of this well-rounded individual that's got knowledge, skills, and dispositions, we find that leaders lead just a little bit differently. And they create, if you think about a garden, I have a garden here in Pleasant Grove.
Uh-huh.
It's okay. Right next door, just there's a fence. There's a chain link fence, and right next door is my neighbor. The same weather, the same area. He gets marvelous results.
Yeah.
I get okay results. And so he has done some very intentional things to his soil and to the conditions that create the conditions for his plants to flourish.
Yeah.
And so we found that you can have two schools right next to each other with very similar demographics and very similar students and get very different results because the leaders understand how to create the conditions for teachers, parents, and students to flourish and thrive. So some of those conditions are a leader leads with humility and partnership. We are in this together. This is not a hierarchical command and control
Yeah.
endeavor.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's a shared, distributed leadership where we co-create our mission and vision, and we collectively pursue that. There's safety and trust,
Mhm.
where we feel safe to take risks and try things. And I know that you, as a leader, have my best interest. There's candor and honesty. If I disagree, I'm not scared that you, as a leader, are going to rake me over the coals or discipline me because I'm willing to share. But you, as a leader, can also share with me candidly, and
Mhm.
it can let our hair down. So we find that happens in those best schools. Um, Another condition is there is a lot of autonomy and agency respected, obviously within a framework and
Hmm.
within expectations, but a lot of respect for individual agency and choice. And there's a lot of ability to adapt and be flexible. So those are some of the conditions
Hmm.
that we find. Some of the behaviors that support those conditions are a leader uh, leading by example and constantly communicating what the priorities are. And they're curious, they're hungry to learn. So they're looking for bright spots inside their organization and outside the organization, and they're hungry to learn from those. And they're willing to adapt and to create and to think, wow, we want to do this. Let's think about our schedule differently. Let's think about our budgets differently. Let's think about our physical space differently. Let's think about professional development and grading differently. And we're willing to explore those things, not for the bling effect of
Hmm.
something cool and shiny, but because it's going to help us go after the type of learning that we care about.
Yeah.
And so they're willing to explore and kind of push the boundaries. And then they're always assessing and adapting and evaluating how it's going, and always willing to just consistently stay the course. I'm going to keep after this. I'm not going to just give up because it's hard. Anyway, we could keep going, but those are some of the conditions and accompanying behaviors that we've found.
Yeah, no, and it reminds me of the book Trust and Inspire by Stephen M.R. Covey. And, a lot of what you said, kind of relates to that, rather than command and control. We're trying to build that trust with our team, and really, in the end, inspire that. And I think, here, as we talked about, BYU and really the inspirational journey that we can have in learning. And so, as young professionals, I would say, they can go ahead and really move forward with that, and do some positive things that way. Um, Kind of the last question I want to wrap up with is just the balance. Balance is something many young professionals struggle with. What advice would you give to someone who wants to thrive in their career, but also live a fulfilling, balanced life?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts come to mind. One is it's really hard to get an A plus in everything in life. And especially as things start getting busier, you get into a career, you start a family, church callings. And so this idea of selective neglect is hard for people that have perfectionistic tendencies. But what am I willing to get a C plus in order to get an A in the things I really care about?
Yeah.
And so just being willing to identify there are some things that need to happen. There are some compliance things that have to happen. But sometimes it's okay to get a C plus in a compliance area in order to get an A plus in the things that you really value. So that's one. Another thought is this idea of consistency over intensity. Just doing a little bit at a time consistently is going to go a lot further than a really intense effort. Pulling overnighters usually is not the best. Let's just be consistent. Um, you're probably familiar with the aggregation of marginal gains that James Clear talks about with Dave Brailsford, the cycling coach, that he found little things to improve and a lot of little things that improve just a little bit in aggregate combined over time
Yeah.
made a big difference. And so just balancing that and saying, okay, I'm just going to work on this little thing here and I'm not going to try to change the world overnight. And then maybe the last thing I would share on that is Clayton Christensen.
Hmm.
Uh, he tells the story. He was working at a consulting firm back east. It was one of those cutthroat places that was really competitive and busy. And his supervisor came to him once and said, "Hey, we've got this meeting. I've scheduled it with you and your colleagues on Saturday. Um, so we're going to meet at this time and place." And Clayton said, "Oh, I'm sorry, can't come on Saturday. Saturday's for my family."
Hmm.
And his supervisor's like, "Oh, oh." Like they were just used to
Yeah.
meeting all day, every day, any day. He says, okay, we've rescheduled the meeting. He came back, says, we've rescheduled the meeting for Sunday at a certain time. He said, oh, sorry, can't
Yeah.
make it. Sunday's for God. And supervisor was like really frustrated. And usually they would just fire people, but Clayton was really good.
Yep.
So he came back later and said, okay, we've scheduled it for Monday. Do you work Monday? Yes, work Monday. I'll give 150% on Monday. But
Yep.
he was willing to draw a line in the sand and set some boundaries
Yeah.
for his other priorities, and it blessed his life and his family's life, and
Yeah.
it's an important skill to have.
No, that's great. Do you have any, as we, wrap up, do you have any other career life advice that you want to share with anyone that is thinking about their professional journey?
Um, I think I would probably just end uh, with the quote by President Benson, where he says that men and women who turn their lives over to God will find that He can make a lot more out of their lives than they can.
Yeah.
And so I would just say, partner with God in this. There will be ups and downs, there will be hard things. If you choose to go into education, it's a beautiful career. I mean, what I say is, I get to go do God's work every day. God's work and glory is to build His children
Mhm.
and give them the skills and dispositions and growth that they need to become like Him. And that's what we do every day as
Yeah.
educators. That's beautiful, but it's also some of the hardest work you're going to do because you're dealing with a lot of really challenging situations. So if you're willing to make your life a mission and go for it, I would say you're in for a wild, awesome, amazing ride. And hats off to you.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Boren. We truly appreciate the time that you've taken away from some of the other things I'm sure that you could be doing right now. But to share this invaluable insight with us today, it truly is a positive thing, and I'm sure will be inspiring to a number of people who get to view this. Your story and advice will obviously undoubtedly help shape the careers of many young adults who are just getting started in their on their journey. I think that's something I always look to those people who kind of helped me, mentor me, helped inspire me. And I think, you've been one of those individuals that has definitely helped me along in my career, been able to encourage me, always have positive things to say. But as we close, remember the journey to success doesn't have to be walked alone. You can reach out to seasoned professionals for informational interviews, whether that's through your own connections or by asking for an introduction from someone in your network. And to help you prepare for these powerful conversations, we encourage those who may be watching this to check out our videos on conducting informational interviews on the website and start building your future today by taking the first step toward connecting with mentors you can guide or who can guide you to success. And Dr. Warren, I appreciate all that you've done. Thanks for this informational interview here that we'll be sharing out with others in the the BYU Management Society and the Young Professional Engagement Program. Definitely a lot of young adults can be able to be influenced by this. So appreciate it. Hopefully
Yeah.
we'll get some more dedicated educators. So thank you so much.
Ron, I just had a thought. I don't know if you could put
Yep.
it in. I just thought of another story that might help someone that's new. I know
Mhm.
this is out of order.
No worries. Go right ahead.
So I just I don't know, maybe one of your listeners needs to hear this story for some reason because I just felt a little
Mhm.
prompting to share it. So I'm going to share it, and if you want to cut
Yeah.
it, that's totally
No
fine.
worries.
So my first year teaching elementary school, my principal came to me and said, David, it's time for your evaluation. And I didn't know what that meant. And so I asked some of my colleagues and I said, what's this evaluation? He said, oh, the principal comes into your classroom and watches you teach and gives you feedback. And as a newer teacher, that she'll be deciding if she wants to continue employing you as a teacher. I said, oh, this is pretty high stakes. What do you recommend? And they gave me some advice. They said, oh, you probably ought to prepare a really good lesson. You ought to pre-teach that lesson to your students the day before. You
Hmm.
ought to bribe your students with candy and extra recess. And they said, yeah, if train your students that when you ask a question, to have everyone raise their hand. Right hand in the air means I know the answer. Left hand in the air means I don't. And then you call on those with their right hand in the air. And I was like, I can't believe this. Is this really what you guys do? And they said, yeah. And so heaven help me, that's what I did. And the only problem was I was really struggling as a first year teacher, had a really hard class, and I needed help, but I wasn't getting any help because nobody knew that I needed it.
Yeah.
And so the principal came in, she watched, my students were perfect. Principal left, total mayhem ensues.
Yeah.
Uh, and I send the students out to recess. And then that afternoon, after school got out, I went and met with the principal, and she was so happy. Oh, David, your class was amazing. And you're just going to get perfect scores on everything.
Yeah.
And I sat there in this dumbfounded stupor, feeling like a liar,
Yeah.
because I had basically uh, put on a show for my principal that wasn't really a true representation of what was going on.
Yeah.
And my students and I suffered because of that.
Hmm.
Because now the one person that could give me help thought I didn't need help.
Yeah.
And I had put up what Elder Uchtdorf calls a Potemkin village.
Hmm.
I had, I had put up a facade that everything was going well.